Joe Biden's soft on crime policies really hitting close to home. Not even the first family safe from D.C.'s crime crisis. Secret Service agents assigned to President Biden's granddaughter, Naomi, forced to open fire at criminals. That after 3 people tried to break into a parked government car outside of her house in the ritzy Georgetown neighborhood. The Secret Service adding, quote, a federal agent discharged a service weapon, and it is believed no one is struck. The offenders immediately fled the scene in a red vehicle, and a regional lookout was issued to supporting units. D.C. police say the number of carjackings has skyrocketed, with reports of over 6,000 stolen vehicles just in the past year. Meanwhile, a CVS store in the nation's capital has been forced to remove merchandise from shelves and display photos of the items instead, after a rise in shoplifting by homeless people. But White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre shocked something like this could happen.
Are we concerned? Obviously. Obviously, we want to make sure Americans and their families feel safe, in not just here in D.C., but across communities. But we can't do this alone. The president, again, has taken action. He's, with the American Rescue Plan, billions of dollars were able to go into states, into communities, so that they can provide funding and police officers to make sure that their communities are safe. But we need more. We need Congress to act.
All right, Janine, if you're a Secret Service agent and someone's trying to steal an Escalade, are you allowed to shoot to kill?
I am so glad you asked that question, Jesse, because I have with me today a copy of Homeland Security guidelines, and Secret Service comes under them. And the answer is that law enforcement officers may use force only when reasonably effective, safe, and feasible alternative appears to exist, and may use only the level of force that is objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances of the law enforcement officer at the time. That pretty much says no. And you certainly, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time, when you go to deadly physical force, a cop can only use deadly physical force, including a Secret Service officer, when it is objectively reasonable, and that is when he is confronted with deadly physical force. Now, let's assume that this Secret Service agent, since he didn't hit anybody and may not have been to the training for his firearm for a while, you can only, in terms of the Secret Service, issue a warning shot when you have a special written permit from the chief of police in that jurisdiction, who would be the chief of police in Maryland. So now we know that the Secret Service doesn't necessarily follow the rules that they're obligated to. We know that they're incapable of identifying fingerprints on cocaine found in the White House. We know they love the Bidens because they extricated a gun that Hunter's girlfriend left in a garbage can near the school. So it's a joke. The whole thing is a joke. How dare you? Can you imagine somebody tries to steal your car? You take out a gun and use it? No, they'd arrest you in a second.
Yeah, and they don't even know if they hit the guy, Judge. They say that we maybe hit him.
I mean, like, how are you going to have a Secret Service agent shoot and miss?
Right.
I mean, that's not good.
It's not good, and it's not legal based upon these circumstances.
I mean,
and I just want to say one more thing on this whole thing. We are living in a third world country. Sorry, Dana. We're living in a third world country right now, where we have to pick up toilet tissue based on a photograph because everything's locked up. And this is because apparently the corporate leaders in places like Target are not cooperating with the police. They're not allowing police to make arrests in Target, cuff them, arrest them, or process them, go out in the rain and process them. So right now we're subject to the kind of law enforcement that is absolutely ineffective. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say, it's not like we're watching an episode of Justified, right? So, which is a fictional show where you wonder if it's justified to go after a suspect. Like, that's not allowed. However, you have to wonder if the people in D.C. are just so fed up, because the carjackings are happening everywhere. And they're usually the criminal gangs are using juveniles to do it, because the D.C. Attorney General, Brian Schwab, whose name should be known, he is not prosecuting these crimes. So when Karine Jean-Pierre says, well, we have the American Rescue Plan, and we have all this money, and they can do it. Okay, well, the money is not going to work if the crimes aren't being prosecuted. That D.C. Attorney General has a big lawsuit against the NRA, which doesn't even have he doesn't even have standing in this case. But instead of actually pursuing these criminal justice issues for youth, he's focused on that. So that is a serious problem. Plus, in D.C. right now, Judge, they don't even have an accredited crime lab.
That's right.
So if you don't have an accredited crime lab, as I understand it, that means that you're charging less, so they're not actually getting the punishments that they deserve. The other thing that's happening is that the carjackings include people. So let's say you're just driving along and then 3 cars surround you. They get out with guns and force you out of the car, and then they take off with your car. Then there's do not pursue. And you're supposed to have an Apple AirTag so that they can track your car. That was the solution from before. And I do feel for the people in D.C. because when you have the White House, D.C. is run by Congress. That is, they're in charge. So why isn't Congress? If I were the Democrats, I'd be like pushing them. You have to do something because who's going to want to live there? Who's going to want to work there? Nobody. They want to work from home. Nobody wants to go work downtown.
And this is after Congressman Cuellar, Greg, just got carjacked, I believe, last month.
Yeah.
That is true, Jesse. That is true. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
You know, in the old days, we assumed 2 things. Criminals would be behind bars, right? That was one. And government would make sure that the public is safe. But those 2 variables, courtesy of George Soros DAs, have been removed. In fact, it's been reversed. It's quite an achievement that one person can have such an effect on on American civilization. We now have free-range criminality and either a decimated police force in our cities or at least the ones that are still policing are handcuffed. So this isn't about the law. It's about not prosecuting the law. We could end up in a completely upside-down country. Criminals are free, and those who fight back end up in jail, right? And ironically, it'll be the safest spot. We'll all be in jail. The conversation between 2 cellmates will go like this. So, what are you in for? Well, I tackled a looter. What are you in for? Well, I defended my wife on the subway against the mugger. It'll all be completely reversed. I keep thinking that maybe we should go woke, right? Because the fact is, we are victims, but we're not treated as victims. So maybe the get out of jail free card is just to identify ourselves as being oppressed. And therefore, we can join the rabble and we can go out and we can steal and shoplift. There was an interesting point in here in our A-block facts, right here, people, about Target. Did you see this about Target, about the retail theft stings? They wouldn't let the police make arrests in the store, and the company executives wouldn't cooperate with the police. So this is interesting because it's not about crime, it's about spying. Target's going to lose $1.6 billion this year. They're projected to. They don't care about their paying customers. They don't care about their shareholders. They hide behind woke displays of bikini pouches while gangs are ransacking their stores. So they prefer to lose all this. And they close a store in Harlem. How woke is that? That's where wokeism gets you. You end up closing stores for the people you're supposed to help. No one is going to come by your trans pride collection if you stop stocking the essentials because they're going to be stolen and you can't make your workers safe. This is where they are. Virtue signaling to activists has destroyed your company.
Try to beat that, Jessica. It's not about the crime, it's about the spine.
That's a good one.
I always like things that rhyme, so
Very good.
there you go.
Nothing rhymes with Jessica.
I'm sure something does.
Okay.
This is how you want me to waste my time.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just sit here for a minute, and then you're like, oh, segment's up. Dana's right about the D.C. problem, and I know it frustrates people who don't work in politics when I say this, but D.C. is a one-industry town, right? You're either working on the Hill or you're doing something adjacent, working on K Street. You're servicing the people who are there because it is the seat of power. And this only adds, if Congress is going to be in control of it, to the argument for D.C. statehood, which I know I heard from all of the Republican candidates that, you know, that Puerto Rico and D.C. are going to get statehood if a Democrat comes into office. And I hope that is the case. But what I think is interesting about this is D.C. is actually even an outlier in terms of how bad it is. So violent crime is up 40% in D.C. year over year, and it's come down. So everyone surged during the pandemic. And I'm not saying that there aren't problems left in Chicago and Philly and New York and Baltimore, but it's steadily declined in each of those places. So there's something even worse going on in D.C. And that's particularly vexing when you think of who's riding around D.C., right? These are people who have a vested interest in not only their own high quality of life, but improving that they don't mismanage this place, right? Like, finance guys or lawyers or whatever zooming around New York, they're not in charge of what happens. But DC is full of the people who are making the rules. And they also want to lead a high quality of life, right? They're important. There are only X amount of them. And I just found that astounding looking at those numbers, that there's something special in terms of how bad it is with what's going on in DC versus other liberal cities.
And your answer is to give DC statehood. Got it.
Well, no, but the answer is to have a representative elected government that actually cares about your interests.
The good news is photos of toilet paper can be used as toilet paper.
The plastic hurts. It's like in a case.
What if those get stolen?
Oh, let's
and what
not
about
go
the
there.
blind?
Let's not go there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.